This is One on One.
We saw people breaking into windows and stealing stuff, carrying televisions down the street.
Hard times in America. Hard times in America.
We stood on our second floor porch and looked out over the neighborhood, and fire engines going everywhere, police cars going everywhere.
While authorities hoped to quell the disturbance with the addition of state police and the National Guard, before long, both law enforcement and the public were afraid of what would happen next. Everyone seemed to be convinced that everyone else was shooting at them.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We're at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. This is One on One. This is a series called Newark at a Crossroads, and we are joined by a very important guest who can talk about Newark when it was at a different crossroads, Kevin McLaughlin. Producer, director, documentary filmmaker. The film that he has out is called The Week That Changed the World, The Newark Riots, 1967. So along with some other folks who remembered, I was a little kid in Newark, and it changed our world. You know,
Certainly.
National Guard, state troopers, tanks on the streets.
Right.
People were scared to death. 26 people were killed. Countless businesses were destroyed, and it changed the city's reputation and its life forever, right?
That's right.
Why'd you
And-
do this?
Well, I was looking for a story to tell. I'm a storyteller, a filmmaker, and this one I grew up with it. It was
Well,
always
your dad has a real connection to the city,
my
right?
dad was a fireman in the city. That my family goes in Newark back to 1920, so I grew up there. And him being a fireman, I knew that was an in to
Vailsburg
the
guys?
story. Vailsburg, absolutely, yeah.
I don't know how. I just didn't know Vailsburg guys.
Well,
So-
half the cops and firemen lived in Vailsburg, right?
Let's not
So
stereotype. Stop. Okay.
It's true.
An Irish fireman from Vailsburg. I'm going to leave that alone.
believe it or not, it happens.
Okay.
They're out there,
So you decide to tell this story.
right?
What was the reaction around you? Did anyone say leave it alone?
Yes, plenty of people said, why do you want to talk about this? Leave it in the past. It's a horrible memory. But they were a minority. I mean, most people understand that it's important to talk about it, and the fact that these things are happening now in Ferguson and Baltimore is proof that we haven't fully learned the lesson that can be learned from these things, that it's a tragedy and we have to do everything we can to avoid it happening again. So I thought it was useful and a good thing to do to study that and let people see how it happens from the beginning and see what it does to the community and to people over decades afterwards.
So it's 5 days, July 12th through the 17th of 1967.
Right.
You talked to what kind of people?
I talked to anyone I could find who was there who remembered it. So cops, firemen, National Guard, state troopers, those were fairly easy to find because they all belonged to some kind of organization. But then I wanted regular people, just citizens who remembered. And that was a little harder to dig up. But
What'd your dad tell you?
He has never been a big one for war stories, but he did say that it was kind of a bizarre thing for him, that he had never expected to be shot at when he signed on to be a fireman.
Yeah, we need to put this in perspective. There were snipers in buildings. There were literally snipers in buildings shooting at cops and firemen who were trying to go in and help people, protect people. Am I exaggerating?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, and that's.
Oh no, there are conflicting stories about whether there were snipers.
Oh yeah, that's a huge controversy among some people, and there's a segment in the film where we talk about that, where a number of people say that that's a myth, that there were no snipers, and others say that there absolutely were because they saw them. So I try to get every perspective in this film and let the viewer decide what they believe is the truth.
But you also talk to people who talk about different perspectives. I mean, growing up as a kid, I said I was a kid during the Newark riots. You talk to people who don't even call it a riot. You talk to people who say it was the Newark Rebellion.
Right. Again, that's one of those controversies, and it's interesting what people said about that. For the most part, you could predict that most of the white people call it a riot, and a lot of the black folks would prefer to call it a rebellion.
And the rebellion was also referred to by the great, late Dr. Clement Price, who was a great mentor and friend of ours, who called it a rebellion.
Well, he was one of many people who explained that and explained it very well. He uses a great analogy where he said that the Boston Tea Party is an example of something that we all think of as a rise of discontent against the crown, but people in England saw it as a riot. So it's all a matter of perspective. But then again, the people who I spoke to who prefer to call it a rebellion, in the very next sentence, without exception, referred to it as a riot because that's what it's called.
But the businesses that were destroyed were in black communities. The people who were killed disproportionately were black.
Right, right.
So those who argued that it was rebellion, what was it a rebellion against, according to those who you spoke to?
Well, it was a rebellion against the oppression of the black community, which, by all evidence that I see, certainly was
Especially
real.
by the police department?
By the police and the community in general. The
power of the white power
the
structure.
powers that be, the government, was not just flat out open racism, but things like plans to obliterate neighborhoods by building highways or medical schools
That's
and
right.
whatnot, that didn't consider the needs of the people who were living there. So there was certainly a legitimate complaint, but I think that spilled over and became a riot because there were a lot of people who just rushed in, took the opportunity to get a free television.
In your interviews, how graphic were the descriptions of the violence?
Oh, some of them were extremely graphic, and presenting them in a way that could be shown on television was a challenge. One of the most graphic descriptions I got was from a state trooper, a National Guardsman, Craig Mirop, who witnessed a state trooper beating two suspects probably to death. We don't know to this day whether they were killed, but they were taken away unconscious after being physically beaten while handcuffed.
While handcuffed?
Right. And that's a very graphic description that is in the film, and I think it's an important thing to show that these things happened, and to learn about it hopefully prevents those kind of things from happening in the future.
It's interesting with Ferguson and Baltimore on the heels of this film. But that wasn't why you did it.
No, I started long before those things
When
happened.
did you start?
This took about 5 years, so it's been in the works for quite a while.
How do you finance something like this?
That's a big question. That's, that's one of the reasons
Financing public television is not easy either,
Right.
but I can't imagine this.
That's one of the reasons it took 5 years, because when you're a one-man team with no money, things move very slowly. But I did get 2 grants, one from the F.M. Kirby Foundation, which is a New Jersey-based family foundation, and from the New Jersey Council for the Humanities. So without those, I never could have gotten it done.
And what happens now to the film in terms of distribution? Talk about it.
We're waiting to hear from some film festivals, talking to distributors. I expect it to get out there. It's something that not everyone understands, but the fact that these kind of things are still happening makes it something that people want to see.
The narrator of the film, Andre Brower?
Right.
Important guy.
Yeah,
Who is he?
great actor he's best known probably for Homicide: Life on the Streets. He's now starring in a show called Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
He's terrific.
He's got a killer voice.
He's the captain.
Right.
He's
right.
great.
Yeah, and he actually contributed more than just his voice, because he was actually the first black person to see the whole thing and offer that perspective. So he kind of helped shape the narration based on his perspective.
Finally, before I let you go, the reaction of family members closest to you to the film.
They like it. People are impressed with it. I was concerned about how people would perceive it, as whether it's biased, and people on all sides of the equation seem to feel that it's very balanced. So I'm pleased with that.
Real quick, how did it change you?
The riot or the film?
The film.
It's taught me, I think, more to keep all perspectives in mind and try to cover every angle and give everybody their say.
Kevin McLaughlin, I want to thank you. Producer, director, documentary filmmaker of a very important film called The Week That Changed the World, the Newark Riots. We're going to bump out with a clip from the end of this very important film. Check it out. It's very important. Thank you, Kevin. Be right back.
Thank you.
There was a pride here in Newark that never was abandoned by its people. And those folks in the city are now starting to see their day as our city begins to turn around. I just think that this city will go ablaze again, that we will be on fire. And it's not going to be an inferno of riot and rage, of bigotry and hate, but I think that it's going to be a different type of fire. It'll be the blaze of hope, the blaze of opportunity, the very torch of the American dream.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been provided by NJIT, the Fidelco Group, Barnabas Health, Prudential Financial's Global Communications Department, TD Bank, Verizon Communications, and by PSE&G. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been produced in cooperation with FiOS One News.